Hello and good evening. Welcome to DLRP Roundup. I'm Graham. Tonight we're going to chat about something that Outside Ears, which is the rather comically named affront to the Inside Ears movement, brought up today, which is an interesting rumour, an interesting story, and something that's generated a lot of debate in the community today. And it's something that I'm sure you'll have an opinion on, whether you think it's right or wrong, and I want to just explore right now what the implications of that might be. Of course, I am talking about the reported potential closure of the Walt Disney Studios Park this year, temporarily. So, on the one hand, it makes perfect sense. The park is going through an immense transformation. It's going through an immense expansion. And many would have presumed, and many actually called for it at the time, they said, well, if it's going through this massive expansion, it's going through this massive change, and it's going to be one of these, it's going to be a massive difference to what we're used to, maybe we should close the park, given the attractions that are open, given the experience, the amount of wall, everything like that. Maybe we should shut down the park, do the expansion, and reopen it. The problem with that is the expansion was always going to take, it was built to begin in 2020, with the Marvel expansion. It was going to end around 2025, 2026. I think 2026 was the end of it. I think 2025 was the last of the building to begin. But 2026 would probably be the end of it. So that is an interesting moment. So it then dawns on us that potentially then maybe we should shut the park and get this done. However, that's definitely not. I mean, in the history of Disney parks, they don't commonly close a park to reopen it later. I mean, it's just not the done thing. It's not that once you've bought an asset like Tower of Terror or the Ratatouille ride, you don't then say, oh, well, we'll close the park and we'll add some more rides. That's just not. If you can get money while you're doing that, you're absolutely going to get the money while you're doing that. So, not being considered at that time. However, then we enter a global pandemic. Pandemic pushes down revenues, pushes down margin, pushes down everything. In fact, it pushes down attendance, it pushes everything down. So, does that then mean that this is the opportunity to do so? No. Probably not. On its own, probably not. So then, we have to look at all the things that potentially go in favour. So let's play devil's advocate here, because it is a rumour, so let's explore the rumour fully before we shut it down. Let's have a look at the independent things and the things that we can see in that rumour that may be true or may come true. And the first thing we can say is that Disneyland Paris did not do its normal summer hiring spree, nor did it do its normal sort of winter hiring spree. So they're currently not going through their big hiring spree that they normally have, where they cast all over Europe and drag people in and make sure they have enough cast. And that's obvious. The second thing is, results are going to be down. Profits are going to be down. That's just, I think every company in the world is kind of in a similar boat right now. There are less guests going to Disneyland Paris for very good reasons and some not so good reasons, but there are very few guests. There are a lot of guests, not going to Disneyland Paris. You then have the capacity restrictions of Disneyland Paris, and potentially hampering, again, the number of people going on any given day. You then have to consider the cost of operating a park is massive and is only really recouped later on when you have mass volumes. And Disneyland Paris has had a checkered past that certainly, has had financial difficulty in there, so you can assume that potentially Disneyland Paris would be considered an option to save money. The next thing is the fact that there is a massive renovation going on in that park. There is at least something going to happen now. There is an argument to be said that the Walt Disney Studios expansion may not be going ahead. Perhaps the plan that we had been presented, the Disney company has put that on hold. Non-shovel ready and non-started projects have been postponed or cancelled at this time. It is liable that somebody's having a look and thinking, well, does WDS need this? Is this something that it absolutely needs? However, it was billed as a rejuvenation of the park. It was not billed as a simple expansion that could be cancelled for capacity reasons. Certain rides have been added, such as Ratatouille to Epcot, which is a capacity-driven thing rather than an expansive-driven thing. And you can see that all over Walt Disney World. They're doing capacity rather than expansive nature. I suppose you could argue at some point capacity becomes expansive, but you kind of get the point. The Epcot Welcome transformation and kind of the Future World transformation in Epcot is probably expansive, whereas Ratatouille was always capacitive. So Galaxy's Edge, for example, is expansive, not capacitive. So I'd imagine these are expansions rather than capacity increments. So I don't know. It's a conundrum. One, the Disney project doesn't really want to spend money it doesn't have right now, and then secondly, it probably isn't going to build for a volume that's not going to be there. But then the argument for WDS, and certainly for Disneyland Paris as well, they ain't actually ever gonna, the guests ain't coming until there's a full second park with a full set for them to do. I would argue a water park's required as well. If I could get them to listen, I'd tell them, build a water park. Seriously, a big indoor water park. Come on, please, Disneyland Paris, build an indoor water park. It would be much cheaper, by the way. It will be much cheaper than building a massive third park. You could build the third park too, but I mean, you should build the water park anyway. And then we have to consider that, this was agreed with the French government. It was probably a condition that the Walt Disney Company buying it over was further investment. So potentially the expansion is still going to have to go ahead. So that lends credibility to the fact that the expansion is going to impact the reopening, or the closure, I should say, of the Walt Disney Studios Park, because it has reopened this time. And then we have to think about what could possibly put negatives to this, and that is that they're already kind of heavily pushing the whole Marvel element. It's already on the park maps, it's already been heavily advertised that the Avengers campus, and certainly the Spider-Man, and the Iron Man exhibits are already been advertised, so they're already coming. I mean, they're not going to get cancelled because they've already started doing the Rock and Roller Coaster overlay to Iron Man, and they've already begun building the Spider-Man attraction, so there is no way that's getting cancelled. They've not technically dug the lake yet, however they've started the foundations of the lake. It'd be a bit odd to just have a big lake at the back of the park, but what would now be the back of the park, but in the future will be the middle of the park. You think about these things. So it would seem strange. It would seem strange to me they would choose not to continue those attractions. They are absolutely coming, so that's happening. So then, I mean, realistically, is 2 attractions more enough to reopen the park? Well, I don't know. What else goes against it? So we've got the 2 attractions there that are underway. So they're underway and they're continuing. So if you weren't going to reopen the park temporarily, you probably would pause them. We've not seen any indication they have been properly paused. The next piece of information we kind of look at, and they're already kind of hyping up, is the jungle book jive that's going to happen in the Motors Action Stunt Theatre. And the work's already begun to convert that stage. The work has already begun to convert the backdrop. So again, that show is going to be happening at Walt Disney Studios, which shows that they're actively looking at ways to use the Walt Disney Studios, or at least divide capacity. And the Jungle Book Jive, and certainly the festival that goes on with that, with the Lion King and the Jungle Book and all that, they're looking at ways to split it. So, I mean, they're certainly in the short term looking at how do we use both parks. And then thirdly, in Disney history, they don't typically close parks, even though, we can consider that, once we get to November, and I misreported on Twitter today, totally misreported, and I said that, it's been considered for the end of August, which is false. It's not. It's been considered possibly for the end of the year. The decision will be made in August. But here's where you've got to kind of be sceptical, because it is a whole park, it is a whole second set of capacity. It is the easier of the 2 parks to run, right enough they couldn't close Disneyland, so I mean, it is the only option on the table, but it is a whole second park, it is more capacity, it is an ability to sell tickets. There are people still going there every day. It is the park with some of the bigger and better and denser rides. I mean, it doesn't seem that obvious that park could close. It really doesn't, especially not when its hours haven't been contracted as much as they could be, when there's other money saving opportunities there that could be taken. So I have scepticism that the Walt Disney Studios is actually going to close, and despite the fact that I translated it and tweeted it, and I think many people thought that I was putting some sort of support behind them closing it, or I was at least advocating that it should close, which is totally not the point. I didn't advocate that. I just tried to really badly, in using my very bad French that I've learned through Duolingo, tried to translate a very French outside ears tweet and got it a little bit wrong, which many people pointed out very quickly. However, the park, is it going to close? Is it going to remain open? We don't know. So we're going to have to wait and find out and see what Disneyland Paris say about this. I'd be really interested in what your thoughts are. Feel free to drop them in any of the comment boxes or tweet me at DLRP Roundup. That has been a roundup. I've been Graham. Goodbye.